everyone, and welcome to another Stone Ridge Confab. I did not look at the camera before I actually streamed, as you can see, so maybe what I should do here is kind of correct my look here. So hello everyone and welcome. Really excited today to be able to dig in a little bit more into some of the great capabilities that we're going to be looking at from a field service perspective here on Confab today. So just a couple things just to do some general housekeeping to start here. So welcome if this is your first time ever joining Confab. I'll be your host today, Scott Frappier of Stone Ridge Software. Really what we're focusing on in Confab is being able to have a really good conversation around capabilities of the Dynamics 365 platform. And technically across all the different Microsoft products as well, meaning we use Azure, we use Dynamics 365, we use M365, really to address the business needs that are out there. So Confab is that place that you can come to, ask questions, get some free consulting. We've got a lot of our consultants that join this session as well, but feel free to introduce yourself, say hi, and obviously I've got chat that I'll be monitoring as we go through this. It's a little bit different than you can tell than a classical webinar, but basically what we want to do is really just uncover the capabilities that businesses need and just have some really good conversation around them, because as we know, on the sales side of things, sometimes you may get the marketing perspective with it. On the delivery side, you may get too deep into obviously some of the delivery considerations that are there that you eventually want to get to, but at the same time, sometimes you just need to have just that little bit of deeper information that you want to dig into. Well, that's what Confab is, and we're glad to have it and support it. So with that, kind of today, what is the focus? So you probably saw in the title, we're looking at Dynamics 365 field service. There was actually a new mobile experience that was a preview feature that has actually been implemented in the solution, and really today what we want to do is start going through the mobile interface and just understand, you know, what is the new look and feel here, what are some of the defaults that are here, how does this pair, for example, with some of the other UI enhancements that we've had in the background here as well as part of this. So like I said, today we're going to uncover a little bit more and then go through that in some more detail. So with that, pitter patter, let's get at her. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and let's start going through some of this wonderful functionality that we have as part of the Dynamics platform. So I'm going to go ahead and flip over there. Look at that. I even got it focused on the current content here. So we're not PowerPointing you to death, right? We're actually going to be in the software. Isn't that amazing? I know a lot of people feel comfortable in conveying concepts and content, obviously in PowerPoint, and sometimes we use that for framing. But really today we want to go into the software. We want to touch it. We want to feel it. We want to understand what it does, and we want to interact with it to see the pros and cons of it. So one of the feedback items that Microsoft has had for some time has been really around obviously the field service experience, right? More specifically, many of you that are on the CE side of the house have known that we've gone through quite a bit of different evolutions of field service, from different apps, from different platform capabilities like Resco, for example, to Power Apps being used, to a field service app being used. We've just had a lot of change. And I think that the core reason for this, from my humble opinion, is the fact that if you look at field service and initially as an offering, it was a much more enterprise-focused product, but it's a product now that actually tackles a lot of other workloads and has actually been in smaller organizations as well. So simplicity, capabilities around simplicity have been a very big focus, obviously, of field service, which is why we've been kind of exploring all these different types of technologies to use for our mobile interface, or even then for our rich interface within the desktop client, so to speak. But today, I think what we're at from a field service perspective is a lot better place, right? We've got the ability now with field service to integrate it with some of our ERP type workloads or enterprise resource planning. I generalize that as business systems nowadays, to be honest, because it doesn't matter if you're in CE or finance and operations or business central as an example. Really what you're doing is you're aligning your workload in a business to the application. So if you were going to use some type of field service, let's say you did HVAC installations as an example, Well, I'd probably point you to field service before I pointed you to Business Central Service Management, right? So remember that that's the intent here, is that when we look at these business systems and the landscape that Microsoft is creating, people that classically were ERP people are actually going to be working inside of CRM type data or CRM type architectures like Dataverse, for example. But we've got to disassociate CRM versus ERP because really it's a workload that's being supported by a business system, right? So with that today, like I said, is really more about that field service experience. So if you go online and you go to the Dynamics 365 price list, what you'll know is that there's a field service license that you can buy, and then that's the application we're going to be looking at today. So one of the new features, obviously, here has been this new mobile user experience that they've been adding on to, as well as some of the interface enhancements, even in the desktop client. So with some of these wave releases, as you've seen here, this actually goes through and documents, for example, some of that information that you can actually access. The cool thing about this, if you look at the link that's up at the top here, you can take a look at this and peruse it. The feature enhancements that Microsoft publishes for the Dynamics product lines are typically aligned a couple months before our spring and fall releases. So this is a really good perspective in terms of what those capabilities are, what you can download, and then how you can enable that then inside of the environment. Now, what I did to be able to reflect and show this is I actually went through and spun up a trial environment. So if you are curious on the functionality, you've never played with it, and you want to set up a trial environment, well, you can do that. You can actually go to the trials.dynamics.com, find field service, and then sign up for that to then have a trial instance that you can interact with as part of that. So something to note, don't need to buy anything. You can get the trial and use that. If you're a partner, please note that you can access this as well through CDX. So some of you may know that CDX is actually Microsoft's customer demo experience is what they call it, right? Where basically we can demonstrate all the different Microsoft-based products. I will say that there was a little bit of a hiccup on CDX if you follow that, where you couldn't create new tenants or environments, but it looks like they're starting to get that resolved. High level with it, go to cdx.transform.microsoft.com if you're part of a partner organization, and you should be able to spin up like an M365 enterprise demo tenant for a year. And then what you can do is you can go to the trials.dynamics.com and then add as many different Dynamics trials as you want then as well to that demo tenant that you've created. So there's lots of different ways to tackle it. The net result here, though, is that what I'm showing you here today is something you can do right now if you wanted to, and you could even follow along if you wanted to. Be that super nerd like I am. So anyways, let's go ahead and jump in a little bit more. So first and foremost, let's do some of the framing here. So in terms of Dynamics 365, what I have here is I have an environment that I've gone through and stood up. So what I did is, as you can see here, bright and early in the morning, I decided to spin this up just so we could follow along as part of it. I created a field service trial by going to that trials.dynamics.com, and then what it did is it actually went ahead and created a new environment for me inside of Dataverse that I can access. Now, some of the things that you're going to have to do to go through this setup, obviously, first and foremost, download the newest mobile app, right? So if you go onto your Play Store, for example, and maybe what I can do is kind of show that in the background here. But on our Play Store, what I'm going to do is just get this over here so that you can see it as well. This is my personal cell phone, so we'll see if we get any interesting text messages as we go through this. Either way, what I can do obviously is go into the Play Store here. So we'll go to our Play Store as an example, and then we've got the Dynamics 365 Field Service application that you see here that you can actually go ahead and then install. So obviously make sure this is up to date. This is last updated on May 17th, I believe, is when Microsoft published the current version related to this. So note we're going to be looking at some of this as well as we go through it, but make sure you have that app updated. The second thing to note is that to be able to use some of the new mobile experience inside of Field Service, there is a setup that you have to enable to then use that capability, right? So how would I get to that setting? Well, a couple different ways to tackle it. I always prefer going to make.powerapps.com, logging into the environment, and then obviously you've got all these different apps then that you can access that are our model-driven apps. Funny thing about this, if you didn't know this, you do now know about it because I'm going to tell you about it. All Dynamics 365 apps pretty much that live on the CE platform, right, are actually technically model-driven apps, right? So cool thing about that is that if you're thinking, as you're looking through some of these screens, like if you want to design some of these types of apps, you could use the low-code, no-code Power Platform to be able to do that and to extend it. And there's some really cool capabilities there as well, as you can imagine. So with that, though, the important thing here is that if you want to experience the new mobile experience that we're going to be looking at as well, make sure that you go into the field service mobile application that is installed when you actually do that trial or when you deploy field service. And inside of there, what you're going to do, we'll press play to actually load it up. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to go to the very bottom and you're going to go into the settings. Now, I'm going to get my mug out of the shot here so you can see that. We're going to go ahead and flip over here. You can see at the bottom, I've got my field service. As I click on it, I can change my area to my settings. And when I get to my settings here now, you can see that I've got some options here that I can basically interact with and then enable, right? And the important one here is going to be that new mobile experience, right? So if you do not have that checked, you're going to get the old experience, right? And that might be good, that might be bad, right? So in some environments, for example, the new interface might feel a little bit too simplistic, right? And we're going to talk through that a little bit, but at the same point, you can enable or disable it really as needed. The other thing I want to note as well is that my setting page might look a little bit different compared to yours, right? Just as an example, I think I've got one in the background here that I can show as well, but in our full environment that I have, you should see, for example, potentially even Copilot enablement that is actually enabled inside of an environment with that is production, and if you have the right licensing for it. Just as an example, I'll kind of show that here as well. So this is actually our internal tenant that we have, and you can see here that there's a Copilot experience that we might come back to for another confab. But today we're going to be going through the mobile interface and the interface enhancements, but just note, here's where we're starting to see as well Copilot being embedded. For example, summarizing records quickly, telling Copilot what you want to update inside of a record. Like, we're starting to get into some of those situations, which is pretty dang cool, to be honest. So anyways, just something to note if it looks a little bit different on your end with it. Now, once you've gone through and enabled that, note two things. The first is that you're in the mobile app and you enabled it. Secondarily, inside of the field service app itself, if you actually go into the settings, you can't make a change there last I looked. So if you're looking for that setting to enable that new mobile interface experience, make sure obviously you go into there to go through and do that. Now, note, when you go through some of the documentation that's out here as well with field service, as we were looking at before at the very first screen, once again, make sure that you follow these steps as well, because it will tell you, for example, the limitations. The example I like to give is offline capabilities are not supported yet, right? So the preview features, as you can see here, offline isn't supported. We can't customize it at this point in that perspective, and I'll show you how you switch between classic and modern, and then obviously the display language is the one that's set inside of the device language settings. So there are some differences obviously with this, but like I said, I would highly recommend to review this so that way you kind of know what you're getting into as you go through this process. Now let's go ahead and jump over into field service. Let's start at the desktop app, because there have been quite a bit of enhancements to the mobile experience, to the actual user interface experience that are really focused around the desktop, right? And I'm just going to pop some of these open so we can talk through that and see them, and basically so you can kind of understand then, you know, where we're going from a field service perspective here as well. So first and foremost, what I'm going to do is I'll go back into my Power Apps here, right? So we're in our field service trial as part of this, and what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and kick off the field service application really to start. Now, inside of here, obviously, you're going to be inundated with this, right? You've got Copilot enablement. I bring this up just because, remember, moving forward, we have a lot of content that we've been discussing around Copilot, and the reality is just becoming more and more powerful. More specifically, I remember initially Copilot, we couldn't ask many questions about any tables, and now, as you can see here, they're throwing the book at us, basically, or the kitchen sink, maybe is what I should say. Basically, all these different tables I can ask questions around now to be able to analyze data right as part of it. And we've seen, obviously, with the new GPT enhancements with the multimodal, we've talked about this on Confab as well, we're going to see even more and expect then that mobile experience and the user experience enhancements to actually be impacted as well as part of that. Now, the very first thing I kind of want to show here is just kind of the list changes that we're starting to see inside of field service. More specifically, when I click on, for example, my work orders inside of here, this list that we're going to be examining is a bit different now. And candidly, I love it. There are some things that I think some of us classic implementers might be kind of like, a little bit painful, right? But at the same point, they're good in terms of, I think, how they were implemented. So what do I mean by that? Colors. Colors have been the bane, I think, of my existence in an implementation process. Being able to take a row and reflect whether or not it's green, yellow. I used to have customers that would just go bonkers, basically, with all the different types of colors that they wanted to indicate records with. And back in the day with the Navision product, we used to do that, where we would go through and then highlight rows with different colors. And then luckily, Microsoft took that feature away from us so that, you know, we were getting into some pretty crazy things, right? Where different colors mean different things. And if you didn't know that, it caused a lot of confusion. Well, inside of our list now, as you can see here from a work order perspective, we do have some color, but the way that it's been implemented really is more akin to kind of those tag type scenarios, right? Where if you have a tag that has different types of statuses, such as, low, medium, high, right? Well, low would be possibly green, medium would be yellow, red would be high, maybe you inverse it, right? But the point here is that you're trying to basically guide a user's eye to some information on this particular form or page. And as you can see here, really that's around the system status, right? And it's pretty critical because we need to know, for example, very quickly here, when I'm looking at my list of work orders, I've got 41 of them here. Which one have I not scheduled potentially, right? Now, mind you, the better way, in my opinion, to do that is to create defined views of this. So that way, for example, you could take these filters and then say, for example, like on our system status, I want all unscheduled, right? And maybe I want them not at parts or waiting or anything of that nature. And when I apply that, then what I may want to do here then is save this as a new view, right? To actually say that this is our unscheduled work orders, right? That aren't even waiting on parts or work or any of that detail inside of the system. So like I said, the visual indicator here though is nice, especially if you're dealing with a large amount of records, right, that you're interacting with. So if I'm looking at my work orders, for example, and I want to quickly see what's open and what's closed, I can see that inside of here. Now, some of the other enhancements that are pretty cool here, number one, you probably can tell the look and feel is a little bit different here. I'm actually going to go ahead and collapse Copilot to give us a little bit more of a view here. But what we can also see is that there are also different types of changes that we can basically instill then into the application by editing the list page. So in prior versions, as you probably know, inline editing typically of lists inside of CE was not something that was very common, right? You would open up the record and then make the changes that are related to it, or you would actually use, like we made a custom Stone Ridge control back in the day that did some more complex list capabilities. But the point here is that what we're able to do now is actually interact basically with data at the list level to actually go through and then set that, right? So if I want to take this work order and make it an emergency-based work order, I don't have to open up the record to go into it. What I can do is I can make that that change then from this primary page here, and then it's going to reflect basically that value. Now, what you can also see here is that as I go through, and we're going to change a bunch of these just to show like the coloring that happens with it, right? So there are setups here that drive then really these lists then from a color perspective. So that way you can align then obviously like priority here is what I'm messing with, but maybe system status would be another one. But as you can see, this could probably get pretty crazy pretty quickly in terms of all the different colors that are on the screen. So once again, the simplicity aspect is what we're focusing on here, right? So this list page, as you can see, has a lot of generalized information that's being displayed by default inside of here with some of the coloring-based capabilities. But, you know, as a customer, and technically I would even say as implementers, we should be pretty cautious on that, just because colors can mean something different to somebody else, obviously, as you're going through and doing that process. So either way, just note that these lists, as you can see from a work order perspective, are starting to see that information. Hey, Jesse, yeah, right, it's getting nicer, isn't it? It's a nice view. It's definitely more modern, a little bit easier to use as well as you go through it. Once again, you do have the ability, as you would imagine, to go through and then add, for example, additional columns really as needed as well inside of here. So it's a really nice capability. Now, going into this a little bit further, let's go ahead and crack open a work order. And one of the things maybe you noticed right away here before you even crack it open is that when I hover over the work order, I've got some new icons that are kind of displaying here, right? So what do these icons mean? So if I click on, for example, my assist edit here, you can see I have some specific actions basically that I can actually then interact with for this given record. For example, I can actually take a rebook action as opposed to going in clicking on the rebook at the top up here, right? So this is basically allowing me then to have more generalized record type actions that I can actually expose then on the screen, so I don't have to highlight, to go back up, click on then the rebook for it. Instead, I can take that action directly basically from the record. I like it, to be honest, because I think it just makes it easier to then perform an action directly on the record. It's just, in my opinion, just really convenient to be able to do that. Now, the other thing that you probably noticed as well is the fact that we now have the side pane integration in here as well with these lists. So as an example, I can pop open my work orders, and then on my far right here, that work order page that actually has all the detail about that work order is then shown on the far right here to be able to interact with it. Now, kind of cool about this, right? A couple things with it that I find just really kind of interesting. First and foremost, if you think about the Outlook connector that we have for this, it's got a great based capability here, so that what we can do is actually expose really the same type of UI or look and feel that you get from that rich Outlook integration that you have with field service as well. So it's really cool to see them reuse some of those concepts then into the application itself. Mind you, we've always had different views that we can do with this, right? We could always hide or show a side pane basically when we're interacting with records. Typically it was inverse though, right? We'd have the side pane on the far left that had the list of records that you could click on, and then it would update the main card page. This is kind of cool that it actually brings that generalized information on here as well as part of that. Deb, yeah, absolutely appreciate it. Definitely fun to go over these updates for everyone. So I guess with that, let's keep on rolling here. So obviously some of that is really nice from an enhancement-based perspective of being able to pop out, obviously, this side pane to then have those additional records. So if you're perusing through records, obviously you could very easily then see some of that data and then interact with it. Now, the other thing I want to do here is let's go ahead and open up, for example, a sample work order inside of here. And let's take a look at this, because this is a little bit different as well, right? So you can see here that there's been a very big focus on simplicity. I think that as an application initially is introduced, it's really complex and you've got all these different fields, and then you always get the feedback that people are like, well, I don't need all that detail. Show me something that's much more specific then to maybe field service or how I'm doing my process or how Microsoft recommends to do the field service process. So as you can see here, we've got our status front and center now, right? Our priority that's being defined here. We still have our work service account that's here and also our work order type, but we can see that some of the summary and account instructions now have actually been elevated really into this general tab as part of it. We still have all the other stuff, right? So the mapping based capabilities, which is interesting because it is enabled, but we'll have to take a look at that. And then some of the asset and contact information along with the booking details that are here. So this is really nice because obviously it's bringing that bookable resource booking, right? We've got all those types of booking tables that we use for this. Booking does as booking does, right? So what this does though is that it allows us obviously to have some of that booking information really front and center, because typically that's what a field service technician is going to be working with on their mobile device, is a booking that relates then obviously potentially to a work order as part of that process. Now you can see here there's not much more beyond this, right? So we've got a lot of those enhancements here from a visualization perspective. If I click on my products and services, we can also see that there's a little bit of a new kind of a view here, right, for the add product based capabilities. So before the subtotals, the pricing information, you could get to it, but it was a really fun way to get to it. We'll just say that. Now, as you can see here, what we're seeing is products and services where we don't have two separate subgrids that we were interacting with. But what I can do here is I can actually go ahead and then add products, and then using that side pane concept again, we're able to go through and then, for example, select different products that we want to add to this work order as an example, state that we're going to be replacing a duo entirely, potentially save that away. We'll see if we get any new errors and how they're handling that, which we didn't get. But eventually here, as we go through all this, what we can do is we can then align obviously products and then also services on these particular work orders as part of that process. And what we'll see here then as well as we kind of navigate is that we can actually go through and then refresh and then have updates then that are reflected for this particular work order. So we've got that Cafe Duo inside of here, which I don't have pricing set up for, but the net result is that we do have our cost information. And I'll tell you what, these are some pretty expensive coffee machines that are inside of here. So once again, I do like this. I like the fact that, you know, products and services, you know, the list, like you said, again, we're starting to get more into this visualization of making it easier for end users. I think from an end user perspective, it may be nice in some situations to have products and services on the form at the same time. Net result, remember, as part of your low code and technically no code process, we can actually go through and then extend that to kind of reflect that familiar view that maybe you want, which might be with products and services on the same page as an example. Net result, though, is that for the majority of customers, having now this list where we have just a nice, cleaner look and feel with it is going to be a good thing for you and easier for your end users to interact with. Now, some of this as well extends, for example, even into for the tasks, right? So you can see here up at top, we've got our task completion, we've got our duration, our actuals that are inside of here. If I want to add tasks, you guessed it, side pane pop out, right? So I could say, for example, this is task 1, and we're going to say that this task is going to take 4 hours. We'll do 0 to start, but we're going to say we're estimating it to be, for example, at potentially an hour. And what I can do is I can take this and save and close it, right? And you can see even then that errors, right, are going to also show inside of here. So in this one, we'll do check device as an example. I was free texting it as a part of the example. We got the error message. If I go ahead and save and close this now with that, what we should see then obviously is that this particular task now in our tasks is going to be referenced inside of here along with our task completion and then our actual versus our estimate for overhead as well, or time for that. So nice features in that regard, right, to basically go through and then reflect obviously the different tasks that you need to be tackling obviously inside of field service to be able to drive that. Now let's keep going here so you can see look and feel, right, it's getting a little bit better reference wise as well inside of here. our KB articles as an example, our guides, and then even our media now, they're all being reflected on here as we go through this. So I guess the key thing here just to note is that this refresh that we're looking at is, in my opinion, long overdue, and it's actually starting to align more, obviously, to what we need in Dynamics 365 to represent kind of the lists and the filters and the things that we're interacting with. Now, some of the features that are not per se related to this last wave release, but are being used heavily out in the wild. Remember, like the collaborate based capabilities you see with Teams, I can actually do connected chats with things. We use this internally at our organization all the time, high level. We take an opportunity when I'm doing pre-sales assignments for our architects that are going to be assisting sellers in that process. What we will do is we will use a connected chat to actually loop the entire team together, and that connected chat is typically then where some of that additional conversation may be coming as well. But we relate that obviously to the opportunity. Cool thing from a field service perspective is the fact that you can relate these then to work orders that you could actually put out ahead of time, so that way in the app experience you would then be able to chat then about that particular work order, opportunity, inventory need. The net result is that if you are looking for a way to communicate with your technicians, you should be using Teams. You should have a Teams account set up for it. And even if you didn't integrate Teams directly into field service as one of the options you have and just had even the Teams app separated, you could at least communicate obviously with your field service technicians fairly easily then from your desktop app to those field service technicians. So a really nice capability in that regard, and that continues to get deeper and deeper as in terms of the embeddedness of that capability as well. Let's look through some of the other forms because I'm a little bit curious on some of the other updates that they were looking at. Like if we look at bookings just really quickly here, I want to go ahead and pop that up. So bookings, as you can see here, this pretty much looks like the standard booking page that we've interacted with in the past. There's a little bit of cleanup, it looks like, in terms of some of the general information here. So we're actually looking at the resource itself and not actually at the booking itself. So if we double click on it to actually open up the booking, we can see there's some better definition here, right, in terms of the list a little bit more, right? So an example of that would be, you know, the new work order product actions, right? So the actions that are inside of here now are newer, right? So as part of the UI enhancements and the unification between all the different Dynamics applications, we're starting to see, for example, some of these concepts that are used in BC or in other applications, such as, for example, even these read-only indicators that are here. Basically, we're just starting to see more and more of this information coming front and center to actually be then displayed, for example, on this bookable resource booking. Obviously, we can do notes and things of that nature as well. Like I said, just really nice in that aspect of actually being able to take some of this information and then relay it. If we look at our schedule board real quick as well, let's see if they've done any enhancements to that. So I'm going to go ahead and just take Copilot and hide it off to the side there for a second. Some of you might still be using the old resource scheduling board, hopefully not. The new one obviously here has a lot of nice features and enhancements inside of it. So you can see from travel time to even status indications. So the actual icons that we are looking at in terms of what that actual booking status is actually being reflected on here as well. So whether or not it's in progress or not. So those colors have pretty much been there for a while. But the key thing here is just note is that they're enhancing obviously the schedule board to then allow for us to do even more. You can still do some drag and drop, as you can see here, as part of it. But the net result is that it looks like a lot of these enhancements are focused obviously on that work order area. Now let's look at one final area. Let's go ahead and crack open the accounts inside of here as well, because I just want to take a quick look at that. I've got, as you can tell, a plethora of accounts that are inside of here in our fantastic demo environment. But if I actually go and look at, these are my active accounts, Let's look at all accounts to see if we have any enhancement changes. Not seeing anything on the page for that. Let's look at the Cafe Duo. Once again, we're starting to see a little bit more of an enhancement here, right, in terms of that look and feel. So examples of that, just to kind of point out, the account information is much more pointed on an account. This is a field service specific deployment, so there may not be fields, for example, regarding customer service, maybe some of those other fields that are in there. But the net result here, as you can see, is that we've got some of our content, our core content around the account, our details of that account, such as preferences, billing information, shipping information, child accounts, and then obviously we still have the ability to get to that related information as well. So not much of an enhancement here in terms of those capabilities. Like I said, the work order is really where we're seeing a lot of those new concepts coming front and center. Now, with that, obviously there's been some enhancements to the mobile interface, right? So let's go ahead and crack that open and start looking at it a little bit as well, just to kind of understand a little bit more from a field service perspective, like what's the mobile technician view going to be moving forward here as part of this. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this focused on our work orders. I'm actually going to go ahead and then open up, as we can see here just really quickly, the field service app. So let's go ahead and bring over my app. There we have it. Let's go ahead and I'm going to actually go into field service here. So excuse me as I look down on my phone. I'm going to go into my info real quick for this app, and I want to fresh start it. So we're going to force stop it, and now I'm going to go ahead and open it. All right, so wonderful thing. I've got, you can't see it on the screen, which is kind of interesting. This is actually, I'm getting my access, my organization access capability that's being used here. So kind of interesting to see in terms of that authentication. So here we have basically the field service app, and maybe what you notice even right away is that the field service app kind of looks like it's got a little bit of a form factor change, right, in terms of that color. So I typically use the dark theme in mind. So what's interesting here is that initial front splash screen was in dark, but then as we kind of get into the application now, we're going to see it's going to be the light theme that's applied to it. Now, one of the things you probably notice almost right away is that this interface is slightly different, right? The older interface from a booking perspective really didn't have, for example, these different color indicators or even some of the icons that we're going to go through as part of this, right? So first and foremost, from a booking perspective, right, I can travel through all my bookings and get to that detail inside of here if needed. I can always click on my home, for example, to see additional settings. So inside of the app, if I want to have the app that opens up, I'm actually focused on the field service mobile app, as you can see here, but different types of status updates and things of that nature you can set obviously inside of the application. Now going back over to here, going back to our main screen inside of here, what we're going to see, as you can kind of see on the screen here, is that we've got some additional new icons that are inside of here, right? So as an example, it looks like we've got a map one, and then we also have the assist edit that's very similar to the assist edit that we have had before, right? So I'm going to do that just really quickly here just to kind of show that. So you can see we've got that pop out for the view details, the edit status, and the get directions that are being displayed here. Once again, my opinion, I think this is a really nice feature, right? It's making it so that you can very easily from a record do that action instead of highlighting the record and then clicking on an action bar to go do that. So really nice in that regard. Now, what this allows me to do then, if I click on, for example, my maps as part of it, what I can do is I can see, do you want to update your status to traveling before opening maps? I could do that, right? So that's really kind of cool. So in this situation, what I did is I clicked on the maps because as a technician, I want to see where that's at. Well, maybe I just want to open the map to start. So I'll just open the map. And then from there, we're going to have that obviously map kind of show up inside of here. But we've not updated then that status basically to traveling as part of that, right? So if I go back back then to my field service app inside of here. Let's do the same thing again, and then let's update and then open the map. So in that situation, we've updated the status to really indicate then that we're traveling, right, to get out on site as part of that. Now, the cool thing about that then is if I go back into my app inside of here, what we should be able to see in the app itself, if I actually go through and show the app again, there it is. But what you can see here, hopefully, is the fact that the status indicator underneath there is now changed to traveling, right? So the bookings, obviously, from that perspective, it just makes it easier and fewer clicks then for a technician to indicate where they're at in the process or where they're at with their booking, basically. In this situation, I can update that status directly from the actual record, and I can even then click on that record, obviously, to get to those details to potentially then update those statuses. So just kind of as an example here, that status has been updated to traveling. Remember, I can always come into that booking like I did, click on the status, and then change it back, for example, to scheduled potentially if I have permissions to be able to do that. And we're going to see and reflect that inside of here as part of that process. So once again, really kind of nice to kind of go through and do that. Now, let's go through a little bit more of this. So on the booking itself, I'm actually going to open up the record like I did just a second ago. We'll go ahead and click on it. When I touch it, what we're going to see here is that it's bringing me more now into this work order that I'm going to interact with, right? So I've got my service address details here. I've got my incident type that's been populated. Incident types, cool thing about that is it's going to help populate, obviously, some of that additional information as well that you may have then for like tasks or consumables or products that you may be using as part of it. But obviously then we can actually go ahead and put that in if we needed to. I've got my booking status details that are inside of here, but then I also have my tasks, right? So you can see here that very similar to the interface that we were looking at before from within field service, the app itself, I have, as you can see here then, kind of that task view along with some of that completion information that's being maintained on the top there, right? So I've got 0 of 3 tasks that have actually been completed as part of this process. Now, here's one of the things that you should know about the new interface is that you can always get back to the old interface. On the top right corner here, as you can kind of see right here, we have the ability basically to switch back then into the classic interface, right? So this is what the interface used to look like before, where, as you can see here, I've got the customer details, I got service details with it, but it's not bringing a lot of that, you know, front and center in terms of the screen on like tasks or services or products. They're listed here, which is fantastic, but once again, this isn't the new interface. The new interface actually focuses on more of the simplicity, right? Where I've got my general information that actually brings that service details into the general tab. I've got my tasks elevated then as actual separate menu items that I can actually interact with, right, as part of it. So once again, we don't have the ability really to customize this as much right at this point, other than if you update the default form, it will go through and do some of those changes for you. But just note that as they release this, as it gets out of preview, we're going to be able to potentially extend this even further, as you can imagine. Now, inside of here with this work order, if I click on my products, I can also then see my products, and the view here, as you can see, is a little bit different, right? So once again, we're not showing a plethora of fields and information. We're much more focused, obviously, to that experience. And when I click on that to actually get to that detail, what you'll see here then is that I actually do have like some of those details that are then displayed inside of here as part of that process. And what I can do here as well, once again, just like in other areas, like if we want to copy, paste, right, we can select all, we can do all those types of actions then that are inside of here, really to be able to go through and then drive that. So if I wanted to look for a product, we'll do CA and just do a search for it as an example. I'm going to select this and just copy it as an example as well. Either way, you know, you can get to those older forms then to interact with this basically to get to that detail that maybe you already have potentially even customized as well, right, as part of that. Kind of going through here a little bit more then as well. So services, if we take a look at it, and then timeline as well. You can see I don't have any notes, but it just looks a lot better, right? Like timeline view, we've always had that control that's in here that we can interact with, but this interface obviously is just really focused on being more pointed. Now, some of the other areas inside of here as well, as you probably saw, the Copilot enablement, right? So as you can see here in this environment, from a mobile perspective now, we're starting to see, remember the first phase of this was really get Copilot embedded, get the standard defined between all the different Microsoft apps on what's used. So we've got the Copilot pane that pops out, or what we call the sidecar. And basically what we're able to do now is take those concepts and start bringing them now mobile first, right? So an example here with Copilot, if I try Copilot, what's going to be exposed then inside of here is the fact that I can actually go through and then use some of those capabilities. So it looks like my A-Power mirror may have crashed in the background. So let's see if I can reload it real quick here. There it is. And let me see if I can get connected again to this. Actually go home. And let's go to our A-Power mirror. And let's go ahead and find that one again. So I should be able to cast that locally. And let's just wait for it to make sure it pops up, because I'd like to be able to go through the rest of this. Interesting. Looks like I'm getting an issue here. So let's try one more thing. I'm going to do a local cast code. We'll do 07501, right? And as I tell everyone, it's not a demo until we have an issue, right? So I'm going to see if I can get this loaded up in the background here, and then hopefully we'll be able to go through and then display. Otherwise, I may have to close out A-Power mirror as a part of it. So I guess what I'm kind of curious off of, I know Jesse, you've got some comments that you've made in the background here as well. We're getting some really cool and great features and functions that are obviously being added to the application. One of the things I'm really kind of curious off of is, if you can post in chat, how many of you have been using this, or how many of you are looking forward obviously to some of these new capabilities that are being added to the field service, and what are your thoughts really on these UI enhancements, right? Because there's just a lot of great things that are coming with it, but at the same point, as you can imagine, you know, that change, you're going to have to think through a little bit more of that, right? In terms of what's the impact, what's going to be the forms that may need to be updated as well as part of that, right? There's just going to be a lot of that potentially that you're going to have to consider as part of that deployment process. So I'm trying again real quick here just to see if I can find it. It looks like my vamping has worked. Mr. Hallbeck, I thank you for that term. Let's go ahead and get this back over here so we can take a look at it, and let's see if we can avoid another crash with this, right? So great, we're doing that. I do not want to give you carte blanche permissions to my phone. Let's go back to our field service menu here. There we have it. All right, so things I want to go through and kind of show. So edit status, like let's click on that particular action, right? So there we go. I can go through and they say, all right, let's set that to traveling as part of it. Boom, goes through and updates the status. Our toast notification looks like it's there as well, which is fantastic. If I go to my tasks now, if I check mark a task, boom, look at that, updates that. I mean, these are simple things, right? But we love simple things. Let's go ahead and add a task as an example. When I click on the add task, this is a weird thing, and I don't know, I'd be curious on others on what you've had happen with it. It's like copying in between some of my actions, right? It's copying the clipboard almost, it looks like, which might just be a bug, obviously, with the field service mobile app. But you can see it popping up every now and then with kind of that, on my phone, OnePlus, it has something that basically shows when somebody touches your clipboard. But it looks like the app is interacting with it. Now, the one thing you probably notice here, when I'm clicking on the add task, well, this is not the new interface, right? So task type, actually I take that back, it is actually the new interface updates that are here, because I have my assist edit as well inside of here as part of it. But as you can see, the consistency, I mean, it's not entirely there yet, right? So when we discard that as an example, and then I go back over to here, okay, so if I open this up then, so we're going to go back to, for example, our non-new interface, click on my service inside of here, click on my add task as part of it. No, I was right. So this is the old interface that's still there for even the new work order service tasks. So once again, I think what we're looking at here to start is going to be read-only enhancements to focus on bringing a lot of this information front and center in the new look and feel, right? And then longer term, the new actions like the add task and things of that nature, we're probably going to start looking at something that's a little bit more simplistic in that regard as well. Other things then too, so let's go ahead and click on the add product once again. Clicking on the add product, this is once again the same standard that we had before. If I go ahead and search for my Cafe Duo, we'll do a water filtration system. We're going to say they need one of those for sure. Go ahead and click on the save action with it. We go back now after the save action is completed. It's reflecting that quantity. If I check mark saying I used it, errors. Okay, this is interesting, right? So warehouse required fields must be filled in. It's a good thing, right? So okay, so I should be able to go over to this, and then on my warehouse I should be able to search. I think main would be the one that we would use for that, and then I could save that away as an example. So now if I have that all pre-set up in terms of my warehouse and my setup related to it, now look at that even. So stocking information is being shown here. So this is kind of why we go through this, right, at a high level, because if you look at it here from a water filtration system perspective, I've got my description, I've got my item number, and then I've got stock quantity, right, which is pretty cool. This means then as well that, like, if you're looking at incident types and if you're looking at inventory that could be a consumable, you could actually align this then to truck inventory potentially for that technician as well, right? So that way they would be able to see that detail as well. Bill, yeah, right? I think the copying is a bug. It is kind of, I always get a little, I don't know, it's sus, as my daughter would say. I'm definitely not modern, but the net result here is that it's a little bit different. So that bug, hopefully they'll go through and then absolutely squish as part of it. And then Bill had some feedback on tasks. I really like the inspection forms enhancement is great as well. Yeah, we should take a look at that, and I'm gonna definitely look at that in just a second here. So let's go ahead and, like, if I check mark that, right, used, there we go, it updates it to used, and we go back to products as an example. That's really kind of convenient, right, to be able to go through and then just really quickly and easily check mark it off and then say what quantity I actually used as part of it. So once again, a really welcome enhancement there as well. Services, let's add a timeline event as well. Let's add a note. So this is test note confab test, right? We'll do that, save that away. I'm just really kind of curious on how they're showing and displaying this inside of here. So I do like that. Okay, so as you can see here, we've got really today, so we've got some of that iconing that we're seeing in terms of the colors that are related to it that are consistent with, for example, even on the booking screen that's inside of here. I've got the notes that are made as of that date. I can get to that note as well and edit it or even delete it. If I want to look at my old-fashioned timeline view, I can click on that and then go to my timeline here as well, and you'll see it kind of load that timeline. So if you do need to be able to kind of do some more filtering and some of those types of concepts, you could do that. And then as well, it looks like even from an interface perspective, like highlights through AI, right? We're getting some of that as well from a summarization perspective. In this one, I don't have a work order that has enough information, obviously, to generate this at this point. So really kind of cool, though. Once again, this is one of the conversation pieces that we typically go through in an implementation, even in a demonstration. Copilot being used to be able to help us analyze some of our data. Just a really great feature, and just makes it easier to interact with. And longer term here, I mean, if you think about it, the update action, describe your progress to review suggested updates, right? So once again, we could actually get this where a technician could actually say, I used one Cafe Duo, and then it would actually go through and then check mark it instead of them, no matter what interface we have, right? And I think some of you will understand this. no matter what interface design you come up with, there's always going to be somebody that loves it, and there's always going to be someone that does not like it at all, right? And I'm using not like it as a very, very nice way of saying that. Net result, though, is that giving people choice to be able to do their actions, for example, in field service by using voice as an example as well through Copilot, it's going to be a welcome feature, and I can guarantee that there's going to be a lot of HVAC repair people that are going to use that capability. All right, so let's keep going here. So that's great. We've gone through that look and feel. So our bookings have that information really front and center. Like what happens if I want to get to more information, right? So what I would do to get to that would be on the more on the bottom here, click on that. And then we have, for example, some of our details then that are exposed then inside of that field service mobile interface. So if we click on our activities as an example inside of here, take a look at it. Look at that. So it's actually going to be that's the new interface as well that is set for it. And I don't have any activities. If we look at our work orders, let's take a quick look at that to see them. All right. It's a little bit different, right? So I've got my work orders form that's inside of here with some of that base information that's related to it. If I take a work order and click on one that's been scheduled, that view that we are looking at from the booking perspective, I'm really kind of curious how close they get or not close they get. So in this example, as you can see, when you click on our work orders right now, there's really not a new look and feel here for this, right, as part of it. This is the classic view, which is fantastic. It does its job, but obviously it's not like our activities or some of those other areas that have the new enhancements. Let's go ahead and discard that and keep moving around here just to be able to make sure we're making use of our time because we've got a couple minutes left. Some of the things here, like sort by, right? So being able to sort on the fields really quickly. I've got my service account, my status. So if I wanted to do it by system status on this form, I could do that. We've got our unscheduled one that we were picking on earlier, right? Go ahead and click on that, and then I've got that detail of that particular work order, which is fantastic. So that works as anticipated as well. One of the things I did hear about this new form is, remember, by default, it's taking the default list that you set up inside of CE to be able to drive that. So if you're going to make updates to show, for example, some of those new fields, you're going to be updating, obviously, that default form that you're using to be able to then basically reflect those updates. If we look at products real quick as an example as well, we've got the new list that's inside of here. Once again, if you always want to go back as part of it, you can always go back into the list by clicking on up here at the top that particular classic view, right? And when I click on that, what we're going to see, all products field service is now exposed here. And then if I had different types of views that were set up, such as my active products, I would then be able to see them. And then if I want to sort, for example, using the classic interface, I could do that as well inside of here. So just something to note is that you do have the ability to always get back. Now, let's say this simplicity is not like you're like, ah, gosh, I just really don't like that look and feel. Once again, you don't have to enable it by default. There is actually settings inside of Dataverse for your environment where you can actually even have it where the mobile app will actually use the main pages or the main forms inside of the system as well. So something to note is that you do have the ability, obviously, to disable that, so that way you don't have to worry about this feature if you're not really ready for it at this point. Either way, like I said, I think that this looks a lot better, and it's starting to get more unified then, and it's an easier kind of look and feel as part of it as well. Now, Bill had mentioned something in the background here, the inspection templates, right? And actually, Bill, I had not looked at those at all as part of this. So a couple different areas, obviously, that we can go to get to some of these inspection templates that are inside of the system. You know, service tasks, the incident types that are inside of here, obviously. And if I just take a quick look at some of these, so we've got these set up. I wanted to make sure of that. The inspection template. Let's go ahead and look at like one of these inspection templates that are inside of here as well. And yeah, this designer, it looks very similar, Bill, to what was there in the past. So we've got our matrix, our text box, our drop down, our lookups that are there. We have the ability typically to even set, for example, different types of conditions that are related to it. So here's I like to explain with the inspection templates at a high level. Inspection templates allow for us basically to align then questionnaires at a high level that a technician can answer that could then be used for reporting or for actions internally inside of the organization. Technically, we could do Power Automate to even do conditions and things of that nature where it updates data and other systems potentially from these inspection templates. But as you can see here is the coffee maker in a safe location. It's a choice-based item that's inside of here. Now with these, what you can also do is you can make it so that certain values, for example, would be shown or hidden based upon, for example, maybe even a previous value that's inside of here. So you can see here that I've got the ability to do that. And if I click on the preview here, then I can pass, I can go through all those different types of settings and then drive that. And then finally, from a logic perspective inside of here, if I want to create these rules, basically, as you can see, I can define what those conditions are, and then I can show, change it to required, skip a question, right, as part of it, to really drive that. So these inspection templates, like you said, Bill, they're fantastic, and they provide a lot of great capability for you to be able to track some of that data inside of the system. So anyways, I think we're getting close to time here. I mean, this is a lot of stuff that we went through in a short amount of time, but obviously there's even additional details inside of here. So as you can see, even on the trial instance for this, the enhanced work order management experience that's inside of here, as you can see, if you click on even the learn more, the work order experience that's inside of here, the list, the form, the customization considerations that you should be working with, the editable grid, right, that we kind of talked through as well, which is really cool. Net result is that this provides you with a lot of that detail as well. So that way, obviously, you can go through and start researching, like, is this something that you want to potentially use inside of your organization? Or is it something that maybe in the future, as Microsoft brings it out a preview and then gives it as a general availability or GA, that you'll want to start looking at it then? But it's got a lot of those great capabilities then built into it that then obviously allow for you to interact, obviously, with these transactions at a much, hopefully, more rapid pace. So awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap up. So first and foremost, thank you again, everyone, for joining. Hopefully you got something out of this. I always view it as the 80-20 rule. If you haven't seen the new interface, you get to see it, you get to interact with it a little bit and understand then how it impacts the mobile environment as well. I guess the big thing here, obviously, is if you have any questions at all that go beyond just what we talk about at Confab here, feel free to reach out to us, and we'd love to talk and love to help you with any of those initiatives that you have, especially if you're looking at field service-based capabilities. There's just a lot of experience our team has, and we're always eager and willing to help out really as needed. So with that, thank you all for your time. We're at the top of the hour now, so I'm going to let everyone go. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and we will see you 2 weeks from today for another Stone Ridge Confab. Thank you again for your time.